Hello dear friends, I am glad to welcome everyone on the Fed Your Life channel. Today is Wednesday, May 17th. Time is 2202 minutes in Kyiv, same time in Moscow, day 448 with Alexey Arestovich. Alexey, we welcome you. Good evening. 50, almost 6,000 watch us, 14,000 likes. Thank you for visiting us. Joined well. Of course, we ask you to distribute links to this broadcast in your social network accounts. Groups if it's convenient to write via Messenger, censor and of course put likes. Be sure to subscribe to the channel of the Fairy Delay and to the channel of Alexey Arestovich according to the description in the description of this video. You understand, Alexey Alexeyevich? You can go there. By the way, the broadcast is on and on the channel of Alexey Arestovich. Those who watch it can watch it there. From those who are here, well then, we will start today. It became known that the deal needs a month though, but nevertheless, moreover, well, as it were, the season also begins. Why is it summer? So it's like relevance has increased, but Russian, basically, all kinds of propaganda, there is a risk, and so to speak, everything to him. Concomitant about the fact that they again fraudulently threw us off. Well, I won't even say there, as I have already recently said, referring to the notorious record, deprivation is committed for the umpteenth time, we only but such. But they won't go at all again. Well, in general, they reacted terribly directly that it turns out everything is for money or for what? Zakharova will comment on everything in the window, so it is necessary. Well, the whole set is standard, but in general they tried so quietly carry it all out. Nevertheless, there are so many conversations. So, Putin himself personally said that they are trying to throw a divorce. I quote it directly verbatim, but under what I signed, that is, the deal, some interpret what it is Erdogan's help in the second round, but in principle, many say that money is no ordinary money policy for this. A lot more adjoins. Well, in general, so what do you think? I think that there may be compromises and money help. The main holder of this deal is Turkey, a state tank head. States and Putin's Russian Federation is critically dependent, therefore. Let's just say very quickly agree to a persistent tone when Turkey changes a ton of persistence. So this time it happened. The same thing happened last time. They wringed their hands. They never told. Without ammonia, without our crops. They're to demonstrate on the decision. I understood you. We are on this occasion lost the poll. Next poll, well, as we usually do it on our channel, are already 22,000 and a half voted to extend the grain deal with the participation of the Russian Federation. This is the first monetary motive for the Kremlin. Political necessity, both this and that. Alexey Alexandrovich is just answering both this and that. Well, actually, so far, out of those 23-odd thousand viewers, 13 said that the money motive, 40 said that it was political necessity, and 48 answered both of them just supporting the opinion of Alexey Arestovich. Well, let's get married next. Literally today the following happened. More precisely today, the news is such that turns up in the Council of Europe today. An international register of losses that Ukraine has suffered due to the aggression of the Russian Federation has been created. It was signed by more than 50 heads of powers and governments took part in the Reykjavik summit website of Europe. Well, and in fact, this is such a very confident step in terms of damages, because discussions about compensation for it areas of reparations they continue to be conducted, and a clear answer will be: will the work on reparations and the confiscation of active state and corporate Moscow. So the question is final, but here the register of damages is already compiled, and this, as it were, should, sort of arrange. Because from something you need to compensate, do you think what it all has? Perspective means this is one of the key questions of this war. Why is key? Because everyone who made up the investor does not perfectly understand the following situation: it ended, and now private individuals and private farm firms are starting to file lawsuits. Massive lawsuits will be tens if not hundreds of thousands against Russian Federation, and how to satisfy the European Court. For example, can Europe open to dismiss this national European international bridge will in no case be able to. They understand that this will be a paralysis of justice and a sharp undermining of his authority. Even purely on this track, judicial and mechanism is better to create in advance than this mechanism should be provided. Political will of many European states in order to mass on it is created because the seizure of state-private property is a stumbling block in many European countries, and so far we know 12 precedent Americans when got rid of some sums, their ridiculous 9 million, and were transferred to the Ukrainian country or in favor of the Ukrainian side. Even still, in my opinion, they were not transmitted to me. There is no mechanism and no one can answer the question so far how often I transfer property to Ukraine. Freeze. Yes. When you start talking about what the Europeans about what was good to transfer the victims in favor of Ukraine and so on, they say it is very difficult for the parliament to vote, and now when a specific parliament of a specific country needs to make a specific decision, what is when the pros and cons of such a register under which 50 states have signed is very strong, this should to push the matter of compensation in the right direction is the most important element, because without reparation, without compensation corresponding to the world for which we are fighting, there will be no post-war. Better than we know the goal, and we have two main tasks after the war. Three is the strategic containment of Russia, which will have to last for years if it is decades. Constant reconstruction of Ukraine, with which they should come out much stronger than they will. And the third is a new foreign policy. This is the case of reparations. All three decisions are related to them. Chessboard pieces in all these three directions, which is very beneficial. And our citizens, the state as a whole, get a serious hope that their apartment dwellings are stolen harvesters. Ruined economy so clear. 9 minutes. We are on the air. 173,000 we are watching. We have some kind of there was a technical problem. We cannot because of the hung OBS. Oddly enough, the broadcast is not shown. Map do not show video, and unfortunately, the broadcast is not simultaneously uploaded to Alexey on his channel. Yes, we found it because we can't show the map, and we were preparing a video visit with Mikhail's process today in Moscow. Krieger, what will we say next? This is what live broadcast means. Anything happens. What is called never wait is unknown. Where something will come from. Well, let's then move on to the situation at the front. Let's talk about it once. Here is the visualization. Will be in your imagination. So sorry this happens sometimes. Curson. dead another adult man. Such a story strikes on civilians have become the most characteristic feature, and growing for the Sumy-Chingan region, that is, the north of Ukraine, where there have been no buyers for a long time. Where it would seem that the quotation marks have already ended the war was like this but today for the Minister of Defense. The anomaly stated that not just a large number of such strikes but is on the rise and this system and we must do something and then look at the bird under in the Bryansk region. Yes, this is just for lovers. And it will happen if there are pilots what to smoke. Well, that's just yes, we are with a message. Lovers to bomb our problems. There are systemic problems do not need to be washed. We will not sin. Tom or on the Buryat front in our update moved forward a little. But this is not a counteroffensive. Do not confuse this with this. Tactical actions to maintain the level of defense and small. The same story. The Russian team does not transfer their airborne units. Our troops defense forces various units are fighting hard battles for holding a position. For expanding a position is very difficult, but it decides by and large. Now it's only shooting there. On the side of the Russian troops, massive shells are going there. Everything is like this. Savings in other areas and a large number of tables from our side. A point. Intelligence and others. Well, this is such a war of the Soviet system of artillery. Sleep. Let's see if you think he will take ours. But nevertheless, despite all the artillery with 100 handles, the infantry makes the legs as usual. Here are the paratroopers, all those who fight on the ground. This war confirmed how many conversations there were. I remember about the new level. This war completely confirmed everything. Classical principles of military art from beginning to end. All newfangled systems such as drones controlled other weapons are only part of the element of the defeated struggle, but in reality everything decides in this way and the decider is always in. All the time while the eggs are infantry. Nothing, only infantry. Only a living person can achieve concrete results on the field. Will keep the terrain whether its robots provide flying. Kamikaze drones are just one of the many types that they have, and this infantry decides everything now. By the way, I must say that the Russian army has practically lost the ability to launch an operational level offensive. Tactical actions, by the way, tried to advance there yesterday and for no reason apparently distract. Trying again to drag our troops something else without much success. And how to say it? And most of the Russian Federation is now a political question. Why continue the war if you have lost? Ability comes like this. He hopes that the West will get tired of it. He will stop supporting this only thing. He will start trying on. German aid package. The French said that they would transmit long range, some kind of scalpel. This is Storm Shadow. Option. There are 3 types of distance, and the last 700 kilometers said more that he would give all his fighters. 29 Council of the Big Seven soon support Ukraine themselves. Their support Ukraine, sir. Every day at least 1,000 Russian soldiers pay officers for absolutely insanity who continues this war for only one simple reason: to hold power. I remind you, when China turned won the socialist war was the so-called they understood in a month and a half. The same situation no, in general, even a little earlier, not Chinese. Today there are 211,000 Russian troops, almost 70,000 are watching us. Put likes here. Something really hung. Everything happens in our studio, and therefore the broadcast. Alexey doesn't work, but of course we will fix everything, and tomorrow Alexey will be broadcasting, so to speak, right after the end. Broadcast will upload it to their channel, so those who write to us in the chat ask why the broadcast is not going on. We ourselves do not understand. Why doesn't she go? To be honest, because sometimes technique, as he says, Arestovich can too much on her. Great hopes are pinned, as you understand, the drone, but everything is done with your hands. Well, okay then, let's move on. We are just continuing. A reminder about the grain deal is the news of the day that the issue is being raised, sir. Extended transactions with the participation of the Russian Federation. It is for the Kremlin that the monetary motive 12% answered political necessity 37 then, and another 51% answered the question. Almost 44 and 200,000 viewers who participated in the survey. Let's go then. Further. Well, look, let's go back to the clique, no matter how intricately the spelling of his last name sounds, but nevertheless. He met there is a conversation that he can meet with Zelensky before the end of the day. But already Kuleba, so you know well, the risk commented that, as it were, what to discuss territorial stacks. There is nothing to discuss, that is, why do you need to drink? We discussed it on Monday, but now it has already taken place. I don't know the first information there, the results. But I interpret it so that now China is concerned exclusively with an attempt to in order to gain a foothold in the status of a negotiator. For this he even sanctioned some South Africans there, who are also some kind of their own world, where South Africa, where in Eastern Europe, where Ukraine, where peace plans, but collective African, collective American plans. Well, what kind of where do you climb? What plan is this? Lol was a corrupt official, which means from Brazil, and now this peace plan. But it's clear that these are Beijing inspections. Well, here. Clear, yes. Well, or is it that simple? Let's look at the top strategy, the logic of Beijing. What does it need? Weakening the United States and strengthening its power. The question of global power wants to become such a regional player. Global, and are trying the keys to the key task of weakening the United States of their allies. These are all Brazil. The farther the more the protective degree depends. This is such a collective attack of China's allies on the zone of the key issue of relations triangles. The west of Russia and China, of course, want the war defeat in Ukraine, not even a war. Defeat is such an intrigue for the West. It is important to keep Putin the final fall into the arms of China is important. The problems of the Putin regime are big. If not the collapse of the problem, and between this force bullfighting plays and China understands that it will not win against the West or rather, it's Ukraine, Russia, it is no longer possible to supply weapons. This is a sharp deterioration in relations with the conduct of sanctions, but does not want to allow a total defeat, including through these, and the West understands that Putin needs to lose the war. He needs to be so grandiose so that he doesn't run across under China. Finally, how thin these are such differential diffraction grating must hit when no agreements if you understand the question. After all, it lies in the fact that then, by the way, he goes to Moscow from rejoicing. By the way, he has been an ambassador for 10 years. Worked and so on, but this one is obvious, so to speak, this position is unchanged. Especially against the background of the fact that is going on at the fronts to imagine that suddenly, for no reason at all, Kyiv will make some such further concessions in order to what for the sake of what for you interest what are here we can listen to who said Britain will support Ukraine from here forever so that some Western countries will not be tempted to help. No one will stop anywhere, nowhere, never anything. Well, of course, they are not fools, they understand this. Moreover, they have to introduce him. He said China yesterday. Literally he said this. Of course, negotiations for many years. This is not as if tomorrow is a decision, not as if tomorrow is a plan, that is, we give ourselves without understanding, this means seeking another, this is different. Correctly you said strategically, this is weakening the United States, strengthening itself, but how in this situation should Washington be achieved? Against themselves at the negotiating table to recognize that without China there is no peaceful solution. This is essentially Chinese intervention in Europe. The conflict of Europe is definitely going on in Europe. China wants to stake out for itself the right, including from a position of strength, from a position of power, having to decide what will be the contours, or at least to be among the decisive contours of the new security architecture, and the way out of the conflict is how they think the creation new security system in Europe instead of the destroyed post-war one, as it were, and already directly from whose participation has never been European issues before, that there is always undividedly Europe-Soviet. The US Union is essentially a global intervention in European affairs. And for the sake of this, for the sake of the fact that they have the opportunity to this door that they put a leg to fall asleep, all the shoulder is ready for the next one. Therefore, as if there is a hole the range of questions will be, well, China, yes. Even you remember when China intervened in internal European affairs at least once in history. No, this is the first time the affairs of the West are essentially Europe decided they're the issue of its own period, of the Opium Wars period. So see but what he said on this. About Kissinger's for a second, the centenary Kissusha and China are the main threat. The world and the very existence of mankind, because they have taken a course of conflict with each other and must recognize this fact, declared the former President of the United States on national security. According to him, the current state of relations between the two extremely dangerous countries resembles the state of affairs before the First World War, when neither side has significant opportunities for political concessions and any imbalance can have catastrophic landing. Today, they believe that as a result of a hypothetical military conflict around Taiwan, like the island itself, so the world economy, which faces the sources of supply of microprocessors. Well, look, he's before that, Brush-Figs declared that he was ready to be a shuttle intermediary between Kiev, Moscow and with the participation of Beijing. Well, in Washington they reacted to this with disgust because nothing is where it's you, the old man, but, nevertheless, he continues to blow towards the wave on his real plate, in general, blowing in the same direction. Do you think his assessment is correct regarding the possibility of U.S. relations outgrowing? There is no traditional war with China. It simply resorts to strong arguments, and you can always say, well, I'm planning, as it should be, international security policy from the worst option. The authority of the man who did it in 75. Why is the deal between the USA against Soviet Union prisoners, and he has kind of rhetoric of this kind. Let me prevent soft power in the war of Russia and Ukraine. They were convinced how the argument does not want to end. In favor of them wanting to propose a system of relationships like one system two countries, so they will once be one side the two systems, now we have the opposite. In general, our public knows little about Chinese topics, so if it's carefully there, then it's written software. Documents directly China declares, and in their scientific geopolitics sit documents, and other party reigns they directly. They say that we have moved to the stage of confrontation with the West must fall, this must also rise. A global player that has weakened the West, and the West attention in terms of the Chinese paper program should, to become a regional power, China must dominate such a decision public, including them little. Leave hope, therefore certainly actually in a state of Cold War it will be aggravated because the spectrum rivalry is going on in all areas without exception of science, the confrontation between the sea and then, but this is not a confrontation with the Soviet military emphasis here. I don't believe ability, well understandable, but standoff on face look one building block. Anti-Chinese NATO, which is also correct, irreversibility and so on. Therefore, yes, in fact, the good cold analysis of China wants Chinese dominance on the one hand. He wants such a bipolar system, as if with the dominance of the Chinese, Asia should take Zhenya's will. Here is the dominance in the first place. Only then the technology affects the Americans, as Babin proclaimed with us. Freestyle American translation strategy sounds like driven competition. Behind these beautiful words, and insists unfortunately no one will listen or to. Fortunately, therefore, it will intensify, but I don't believe in the hot phase. Only a combination of circumstances. The Americans will not go either. It will be a mutual check of the military. Each other's strengths, treatment, accessibility probes. There are Chinese shadow there on those around. But one base is another base, but India, and in this scan the United States. Both sides are there. But this process has already been going on for quite a long time actually. She is actually nationalist pro-American there for a long time now, already talking about some other vectors in India does not have to look. We are already 250,000 people watching, 90,000 likes, and we continue. Our poll has almost 56,000 voted in the poll. The question sounds like this is the extension of the grain deal with the participation of the Russian Federation. It is for the Kremlin that the monetary motive 13, they said exactly, the political is necessary 37 both. 51 in practice rarely changes well. Let the people continue to vote, this is already good, please. Distribute links to this broadcast in your social media accounts. Be sure to subscribe to the Fairy channel. Dean Life and on the channel of Alexey Arestovich. In the description of this video by his name you can find a link to his channel. Well, look, let's have your time. An important topic regarding daggers. It continues to develop these 6 daggers by. According to Moscow, 5 Patriot launchers were destroyed, 1 was damaged, so to speak, made all those who were disabled sat there. Well, this whole set that they constantly distribute, although here are the Americans from their country with links are not named, the source says he, and yes, damage, but it seems like in one installation it will all be in place. Fixed. What happened there, as it is clear that officially no one will confirm anything, will not say, but I'm just too. The fact that, firstly, the balance has been achieved, that is, anyway, they didn't kill anyone, so to speak, these missiles they were shot down, that is, the result has already been achieved even if one would have suffered, and Petri. So it was even destroyed, but the task was something. People did not die, that is, Kyiv was protected, therefore, this is the second news. See, they say I don't know the truth. It's not that in Russia the developer of hypersonic missiles was arrested due to fault, and in the state army, the truth is 3 persons are cited. Everywhere all the channels publish with reference even to the Moscow Times, though it's not true I don't presume to judge, but I completely believe in this. Because there, even without this, without everything, constantly every day someone is not taken for a visit by the guilds, then scientists, then there are dozens of designers there, not hundreds of names. You can easily find on the internet directly officially those who are sitting, therefore. Imagine that they are there for stealing, and for some more milking they took away some designers. All kinds of enterprises, by the way, I willingly believe reactively, so to speak, reacted to 6 downed daggers. Hypersonic missiles which cannot be stopped at all and which should have clicked, literally Putin said. Click on these Patriots and here is the result. How to evaluate it already after a few days on the 16th, more precisely. There was a rocket attack and so on, whether the Russian industry produces with an automatic transmission. But practically none, but there are no strangers of their own, strangers they put yes and their own produce. Attention, a country that does not produce automatic transmission can make hypersonic weapons invulnerable. And here they are. You know how they say that yes, we would be lagging behind in the rest of the field. But the military-industrial complex was advanced. I understand what it is. Drank I was the protagonist and keeps the deceit. But they held on for a long time like this. No, now for 16 months the motor. Experiments on the PC. Can you name at least one type of weapon? Or maybe I can't be. Yes, it turned out to match the declared. I said I say, and I will say, this is a huge factory for the production. And the main achievement is exorbitant, and the bubble was immediately pierced with the help of the West, of our other allies. So nuclear weapons, well, yeah. That is, we assume that if they tactically carry these daggers, then they will not reach. They can shoot him down and it's still on the DRF. How much is left, how many of these daggers are left is a big question, but it's a mystery. We all the time plan one number, they have another, so how can there be no? Well, there are a lot of nuances here, dark rumors. They hear from different places that, as it were, not all the missiles and on the right before striking had to be like this. Not how to assemble one from several sewers and so on. Therefore, as it were, competitions of the Western so far. Ukrainian military naturally ended up being significantly damaged. If one was damaged, it is like this: when repelling such a raid of a complex, it is very difficult for configuration according to the drawing. Moreover, it must be understood that such Patriots of the United States are in storage. Is already being hundreds of units, another 20. Russian competition, therefore fairy tales. The Putin regime is naturally politically reformed. He does not want to over the head. All those who did not turn out to be not only yes, and it would seem that they are already devoted already. Such workers already accepted salt. It's better. In principle, a Sharashka under Stalin is waiting for something good. These were organized differently. They can even send him to hell, even sitting in a pre-trial detention center. Here everything is a little different because I know at a meeting it means. When Medvedev ruled, when the Secretary of Security for State Defense was reading a telegram to Stalin there now. No one remembers it was several months in that they really shot the directors of production. Here you can throw a statement to say you here you go he, and more precisely sword, we mean these details, that's all. Therefore this is such a topic, you know, trying to spread the Stalinist methods by the Rothschild world in which they all live in Russia for themselves. I mean with the word this privileged class, well, funny. Yes, get up, drink something like this, towards the end of us for 38 minutes, unfortunately, I want to again say that we have hung OBS studio, we broadcast live, it does not transmit packets unfortunately, on Alexey's channel. Listovich, we can't show either the video or the picture. We have them, unfortunately, this happens, and that's why for. It would be better if you nevertheless distributed links to this broadcast as widely as possible. We are almost 100,000. Likes 265,000 and they are watching, but if you did it, it would definitely increase the coverage, but look at me about. I wanted to mention this. Here was an article that says in Ukraine Butusov is a well-known journalist. Wrote about the fact that the head of the SBU Vasily is behind the explosions and liquidations of odious Putinists in the Russian Federation. Malyak, and he says that all this sabotage work and most of the successful operations. Enemy rear. I am now translating from Ukrainian. We have the SBU forces and the Crimean Bridge behind this, and that's all the rest. And so on, but as it were clearly, a journalist has the right to express his point of view, a free country has the right, and so on. But do you agree that in Ukraine, well, in general, as the main special service, it is still a hut? Which is how the Mossad has already developed. Yes, well, it's customary to call this Ukrainian. Well, let's go in order. We don't explode for anyone, it's not official. We confirm, you say we only fight on the territory of Ukraine. Protects quite often was made, and the third, professionalism of the security service. Ukraine, at least individual departments such as the counterintelligence department. Going off scale, they don't learn better from them. The professionals of the world are better Americans, the British learn from ours. intelligence department how to conduct certain operations. Therefore, we have something to be proud of. We can't say that our massage has long been formed already. Here I am about. What kind of massage? Applaud Masad Masadovich Masada. By the way, one option is a fortress. Masada celebrity Stembola of the court. Of course they are abbreviations by accident. Yes, they are all there as best they could. Who does not know this? They are a legend. Well, more precisely, this is a historical legend that they took a long time to defend there. Its height allowed, and then everyone killed each other when it became impossible. So well, the place where he stood and lived, fed on birds and water, water dripped. I have been there many times. Heroic example. Jewish history is full of such heroic examples. This is it. Yes, well, we have already 40, almost 1.5 to tell. Yes, we are now talking about him. Unfortunately, I know Mikhail for a very, very long time. So Mikhail went through the Department of Russia there before Solidarity, in which we were. He was a prominent activist in the city's Solidarity organization, and then our home video we will post in our Telegram channel. Well, in general, it's us. Look at my channel, and this is the question: are there any special Russians? Are not good. A Jew is especially natural, but he comes from the Dnieper, but he has been living in Russia all his life. Today he was sentenced to 7 years for 2 posts, but he called for Putin to be judged and to see him at the trial. It means to be shot. And so on. To a person he is sharp, straight, and repeats, so to speak. Many Mikhail know his straightforwardness is always so. It was off the charts. Even someone somehow, well, took off a little. Well, of course, call Putin there as we call him. Plush freak. Of course we can, well, somehow, after all, somewhere, but he is such a person who is in his pocket for a word. Never climbed. Everyone knows him, and I think that he was avenged like that. He fundamentally supported Ukraine therewith. The first day since the age of 14, the main activist did not participate in the organization of everyone, and now inconceivable procession of the famous froze against the war in Ukraine that we carried out, and, so to speak, in all rallies. Well, it's impossible to list. Today they gave him 7 years. Today he smiled, shouted, was happy, said that this garbage what they gave me there, and so on. And the man, he is very elderly, well, close to the elderly despite the fortress. So they decided to mention him like this today. His relatives wrote to me once again. Of course, we can't do anything to help yet, but it will come. I didn't know about it now exists before that, but today I watched the video. I understood that. Yes, in the face of Putin's court, to say that I am for Putin.